I was standing in my front yard watching my neighbor's dog pee on my tomato plants when Deborah Whitmore from the HOA marched up my driveway like she owned the place. She clutched her phone in one hand and a stack of papers in the other, her lips pressed into that familiar thin line that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. That someone, apparently, was me. "Zane Vasquez," she announced, not asked. "I need to speak with you immediately about a serious violation of our community standards." I wiped the dirt from my hands onto my jeans and straightened up. It was a Saturday morning in Asheville, North Carolina, and I had been enjoying the mild spring weather while tending to my front yard vegetable stand. Nothing fancy, just a small wooden table with some fresh tomatoes, cucumbers, and zucchini from my garden. I had been running it for about 3 weeks, and my neighbors seemed to love it. "Morning, Deborah. What can I do for you?" Her eyes narrowed behind her designer glasses. "You can start by removing this monstrosity immediately." She gestured at my simple stand like it was a pile of garbage. Section 12, Paragraph 4 of our HOA bylaws clearly states that no commercial activities are permitted on residential properties. "It's not commercial," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I'm not making any money. It's a free vegetable stand. People take what they need and leave what they can. Sometimes they leave nothing, and that's fine too." Deborah's face turned a shade of red that matched my ripest tomatoes. "That's irrelevant. The appearance of commercial activity is enough to constitute a violation. You have 48 hours to remove it, or you'll be fined $500 per day until compliance is achieved." She thrust a formal notice into my hands and spun on her heel, her expensive shoes clicking against my concrete driveway. I watched her retreat to her silver BMW, my jaw clenched tight enough to crack walnuts. My wife Nina had warned me about this. When we moved into Riverside Meadows 3 years ago, she had read through the entire HOA contract and highlighted the parts that seemed unreasonable. I had laughed it off then, thinking nobody would actually enforce half of those rules. I was learning that I had been very wrong. I looked back at my vegetable stand. The wood was reclaimed from an old barn, sanded smooth and stained a warm honey color. I had spent 2 weekends building it, making sure everything was level and sturdy. A hand-painted sign read, "Free produce, take what you need." In the basket below, people had left spare change, fresh flowers, homemade cookies, and thank you notes. Mrs. Patterson from 3 doors down had left a card telling me how much the fresh vegetables meant to her on her fixed income. The Rodriguez family had dropped off a batch of tamales as thanks. This wasn't about rules. This was about Deborah needing to flex her authority. I pulled out my phone and called my buddy Marcus, who worked as a paralegal downtown. After explaining the situation, he went quiet for a moment. "Man, that's harsh," he finally said. "But technically, HOAs can be really strict about this stuff. You signed the agreement when you bought the house." "There has to be something I can do. I'm not selling anything. I'm not even asking for donations." "Let me look into it. Maybe there's a loophole or something. In the meantime, don't take the stand down yet. You've got 48 hours. Let me see what I can find." I spent the rest of Saturday fuming and Sunday researching. I read through every single page of the HOA bylaws, looking for any exception or contradiction. The document was a mess of legal language and contradictory statements, but one thing was clear. Deborah was right about the commercial activity clause. Even the appearance of such activity was prohibited. Monday morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table, coffee growing cold in my mug, when Nina walked in from her morning run. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she was breathing hard from the 5-mile circuit she did every other day. "You're still obsessing over this," she said, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. It's not right, Nina. That stand helps people. Mrs. Patterson told me she was able to make fresh salads for the first time in months because of the vegetables. The Rodriguez kids stop by after school and grab snacks. It's building community. She sat down across from me, her expression softening. I know, babe, but Deborah doesn't care about community. She cares about property values and following rules for the sake of following rules. There has to be a way around this. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Call me, might have something. I dialed immediately, putting him on speaker so Nina could hear. Okay, so I did some digging, Marcus said, his voice crackling slightly over the connection. Your HOA agreement doesn't supersede municipal ordinances. Asheville has an urban agriculture initiative that was passed 2 years ago. It allows residents to operate small-scale food distribution on their properties with proper permits. Permits? Yeah, you'd need to get a permit from the city. It's part of their food security and sustainability program. The permit specifically protects urban gardens and small-scale food sharing operations from restrictive covenants like HOA rules. I felt a surge of hope. How do I get one? You'll need to apply through the city planning office. They meet every Tuesday and Thursday. Tomorrow's Tuesday. I can send you the application forms, but you'll probably want to show up in person to explain your situation. I'll be there. Nina was already pulling up the city planning office website on her laptop. Says here they're open from 8 to 5. You should get there early. That night, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I would say, how I would explain the importance of the vegetable stand. By the time my alarm went off at 6, I was already awake and halfway through my second cup of coffee. The Asheville City Planning Office was located in a renovated brick building downtown, wedged between a craft brewery and a bookshop. I arrived at 7:45, and there were already 4 people in the waiting area. I took a number from the dispenser and settled into an uncomfortable plastic chair. The morning dragged. I watched person after person get called up to the counter, discuss their permits or complaints, and leave. At 10:30, my number finally lit up on the electronic board. The clerk behind the counter was a young woman with bright purple hair and multiple ear piercings. Her name tag read Jessica. "How can I help you?" she asked, genuinely friendly. I explained my situation, the words tumbling out faster than I intended. The vegetable stand, the HOA violation notice, the fact that I was helping my neighbors. Jessica listened patiently, occasionally nodding. "Okay," she said when I finished. "You'll need to fill out a UA7 form for an urban agriculture distribution permit. It's designed exactly for situations like yours." She handed me a clipboard with several pages attached. "Fill this out completely. You'll need to include the dimensions of your distribution area, estimated foot traffic, and a brief explanation of your operation." I took the clipboard to a corner table and started writing. The form was surprisingly straightforward. I described the stand, its purpose, and the positive impact it had on my immediate community. I included photos I had taken on my phone, showing the modest setup and some of the thank you notes I had received. When I returned to the counter, Jessica reviewed my application with a careful eye. "This looks good." The approval usually takes 7 to 10 business days, but you can request an expedited review if you're facing an immediate deadline. I've got less than 24 hours before the HOA starts fining me. Her eyebrows shot up. "Definitely expedited then." "That adds a $50 fee, but we can have someone review this by tomorrow morning." I paid the fee without hesitation. Jessica stamped my application and handed me a receipt. "Check your email tomorrow morning. If it's approved, you can come back and pick up the physical permit. Once you have that, your HOA can't touch you. Municipal law supersedes HOA regulations. I left the office feeling lighter than I had in days. On the drive home, I stopped at a local print shop and made copies of everything, just to be safe. When I pulled into my driveway, Deborah's BMW was parked in front of my house. She was standing on the sidewalk, taking photos of my vegetable stand with her phone. Another woman was with her, someone I recognized from HOA meetings but whose name I couldn't remember. "Zane," Deborah said as I got out of my truck. "I'm documenting the continued violation. You now have less than 15 hours to comply." "I'm working on it," I said, keeping my voice level. "Working on it isn't compliance. If that stand is still here tomorrow at noon, the fines begin." The other woman, a blonde wearing yoga pants and an expensive jacket, chimed in. "You're really bringing down the neighborhood aesthetic, Zane. Some of us take pride in our community." "My name's Sharon, by the way," the woman added as if I had asked. "I'm the HOA vice president." "Nice to meet you, Sharon. I'm trying to follow the proper procedures here." Deborah waved dismissively. "There are no procedures that will allow this. The rules are clear. Remove the stand or face the consequences." They left, and I went inside to find Nina making dinner. The smell of garlic and onions filled the kitchen. "How'd it go?" she asked. I told her about the permit application, the expedited review, and Deborah's little photo session. "So we just wait. We wait." That night felt longer than the previous one. I kept checking my email every few minutes, even though I knew the review wouldn't happen until business hours. Nina finally took my phone away at 11 and made me watch a movie with her. Tuesday morning arrived with rain. Heavy drops pelted the windows, and thunder rumbled in the distance. I checked my email at 6, 7, and 8. Nothing. At 8:45, my phone chimed. Email from the City of Asheville Planning Department. My hands shook as I opened it. The first line was all I needed to see. "Your application for an urban agriculture distribution permit has been approved." I let out a whoop that brought Nina running from the bathroom, toothbrush still in her mouth. "Got it?" she asked around a mouthful of toothpaste. "Got it." The email instructed me to pick up the physical permit at the planning office between 9 and 5. I was dressed and out the door by 9:15. Rain be damned. Jessica greeted me with a smile when I arrived. "Congratulations. Your application was approved by the planning director this morning. She was actually really impressed with what you're doing." She handed me a laminated certificate with the city seal. It was official, legitimate, and absolutely beautiful. The permit authorized me to operate a small-scale food distribution point at my residential address, specifically protecting the operation under Asheville's Urban Agriculture Initiative, Ordinance 2023-147. "One more thing," Jessica said, pulling out another document. "This is a copy of the ordinance itself, and a legal summary explaining how it supersedes restrictive covenants. Your HOA can't override municipal law. Keep this with your permit." I thanked her profusely and practically ran back to my truck. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and weak sunlight was trying to break through the clouds. At home, I used my laminator to add an extra layer of protection to the permit, then mounted it on a small stand right next to the vegetable sign. The text was clearly visible. Operating under City of Asheville Urban Agriculture Permit UA 2025-0847, protected under Municipal Ordinance 2023-147. I had just finished when Deborah's BMW pulled up again. She got out, umbrella in hand despite the clearing weather, and marched toward my yard. This time, she had brought reinforcements. Sharon was back, along with two men I recognized as other HOA board members. "Zane Vasquez, it is now past noon on Tuesday," Deborah announced, pulling out her phone to show me the time. You are officially in violation and subject to fines of $500 per day until—" She stopped mid-sentence, staring at the permit displayed on my stand. "Until what?" I asked, unable to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. She stepped closer, her eyes scanning the document. Her face went through several interesting color changes. "This is fake," she finally said. "It's not. Feel free to call the city planning office and verify." Sharon was reading over Deborah's shoulder. "Can they even do this?" "Municipal law supersedes HOA regulations," I said, quoting the legal summary Jessica had given me. "The city of Asheville passed an urban agriculture initiative in 2023, specifically to promote food security and community sustainability. My vegetable stand qualifies for protection under that ordinance." One of the men, a heavyset guy named Robert, spoke up. "Deborah, he might be right. I remember hearing about that ordinance. It was part of the council's green initiative." Deborah's jaw clenched. "I'll be consulting with our HOA attorney. This isn't over." "Actually, it is," I said. "But please do consult your attorney. They'll tell you the same thing the city already told me." They left in a convoy of expensive vehicles, and I couldn't help but smile. Nina came out with 2 glasses of lemonade. "You look pleased with yourself." "I am. Very pleased." She clinked her glass against mine. "To vegetables and bureaucratic victories. I'll drink to that." The next few days were blissfully quiet. My vegetable stand continued to serve the neighborhood, and I even expanded it slightly, adding some fresh herbs and a few jars of homemade preserves Nina had made. The permit remained prominently displayed, and I kept multiple copies of all my documentation inside the house. On Friday afternoon, I was refilling the tomato basket when a man in a suit approached. He was tall, probably in his 50s, with graying hair and a briefcase that looked like it cost more than my truck. "Zane Vasquez?" he asked. "That's me." He handed me a business card. "Gerard Mitchell, attorney for Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association. I need to speak with you about your vegetable stand." "Okay." "My clients inform me you obtained some kind of city permit to circumvent HOA regulations." "I didn't circumvent anything. I followed proper legal procedures to operate an urban agriculture distribution point. The city approved my application because it aligns with their sustainability initiatives." Gerard pulled out his phone and made a show of pulling up a document. "The HOA agreement you signed when purchasing your property gives the association authority over all external structures and commercial activities." "Good thing this isn't a commercial activity then. I'm not selling anything. The appearance of commercial activity is sufficient." "Not according to the city. Municipal ordinances supersede HOA regulations. Your clients should have explained that to you before you drove out here." Gerard's professional smile faltered slightly. "Mr. Vasquez, my clients are prepared to take legal action to remove your structure. This will be expensive and unpleasant for everyone involved. Then your clients are wasting their money. I have every right to operate this stand. The city planning director personally approved my permit. Unless you want to sue the city of Asheville, I suggest you save your billable hours." He studied me for a long moment, then put his phone away. "I'll be in touch." "I'm sure you will." That evening, Nina and I were having dinner when Marcus called. I put him on speaker. "Dude, I just got a very interesting call from an attorney named Gerard Mitchell. He wanted to know if I had helped you with your permit application." "What did you tell him?" "I told him to have a blessed day and hung up. But seriously, Zane, they're looking for any angle to come at you. This Deborah woman is apparently obsessed. Let her be obsessed. I followed the law. I have the permits. There's nothing they can do. Just watch your back. HOA boards can be vindictive." Marcus's warning proved prescient. Over the next week, I received 3 separate code violation notices from the HOA. My grass was allegedly too long, it wasn't. My mailbox was the wrong shade of black, it wasn't. My outdoor garbage bins were visible from the street, they were, but so were everyone else's. I photographed everything, documented the dates and times, and sent polite but firm responses to each notice. I also started keeping a detailed log of all HOA interactions, just in case. The situation escalated 2 weeks later, when I received a formal letter stating I was banned from attending HOA meetings until the current violation situation is resolved. Since there was no violation, this was clearly just harassment. I decided it was time to take a different approach. Instead of just defending myself, I needed to go on the offense. Saturday morning, I drove downtown to City Hall. The mayor of Asheville, Patricia Chen, had office hours every other Saturday morning for constituent meetings. It was first come, first served, and I arrived at 7:30 for an 8 o'clock opening. By 8, there were about a dozen people waiting. We were led into a conference room where Mayor Chen worked her way through the list, spending about 10 minutes with each person. At 9:40, my name was called. Mayor Chen was a small woman with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. Her office was decorated with photos of Asheville neighborhoods and local landmarks. "Mr. Vasquez, what can I do for you?" I explained the entire situation. The vegetable stand, the community support, the HOA threats, and the permit I had obtained. I showed her copies of everything, including the harassment notices I had been receiving. She listened carefully, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Your vegetable stand sounds exactly like the kind of initiative we were hoping to encourage with the Urban Agriculture Ordinance," she said. "The whole point was to promote community food sharing and reduce barriers to accessing fresh produce." That's what I thought. "But my HOA is treating it like I'm running an illegal business. And you're not charging anything. Nothing. It's completely free. People leave donations sometimes, but I never ask for them and I don't rely on them." Mayor Chen turned to her computer and typed for a moment. "I'm looking at your permit application now. Planning Director Williams gave it high marks. She actually mentioned it in our last staff meeting as a model example." "I didn't know that. Here's what I can do. I can't override your HOA's general authority, but I can issue a mayoral commendation recognizing your contribution to community food security. It won't have legal weight, but it will be a public statement of support. And I can have our city attorney send a letter to your HOA's lawyer clarifying that your permit is legitimate, and any attempt to override it would put them in conflict with municipal law. That would be incredible. Consider it done. Give me a few days to coordinate with our legal team." She stood and shook my hand again. "Keep doing what you're doing, Mr. Vasquez. We need more residents like you." I left City Hall feeling like I had just gained a powerful ally. Nina was thrilled when I told her, and we celebrated with dinner at our favorite local restaurant. The commendation arrived on Thursday via certified mail. It was an official document on city letterhead, signed by Mayor Chen, recognizing my outstanding contribution to community food security and neighborhood cohesion through the establishment of a free vegetable distribution point. A press release had been sent to local media. By Friday morning, a reporter from the Asheville Citizen-Times had called asking for an interview. By Saturday, there was a photographer at my house taking pictures of the vegetable stand. By Sunday, there was a full-page article in the local section with the headline, "Local Resident Fights HOA to Keep Community Vegetable Stand." The article was fair and thorough, explaining the situation, my permit, and the mayor's commendation. It included a quote from Deborah describing the stand as a violation of community standards, which made her sound exactly as petty as she was. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My phone started ringing with calls from neighbors offering support. People I had never met stopped by to drop off donations and thank me. Local farms began contributing excess produce. The Rodriguez family organized a petition supporting the stand, and within 3 days, they had over 200 signatures from residents of Riverside Meadows. On Tuesday, I received an email from Gerard Mitchell, the HOA attorney. It was brief and professional. Upon review of relevant municipal ordinances and consultation with City Legal Counsel, the Riverside Meadows HOA acknowledges your right to operate the vegetable stand under city permit. All violation notices are hereby withdrawn. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't missing something. Nina read it over my shoulder. "Is this real?" she asked. "I think we won." "You think?" I called Marcus, who confirmed that the language was standard legal surrender without admitting defeat. They can't fight city law, and now that you've got public support and the mayor backing you, they'd look terrible trying. Deborah knows she lost. That should have been the end of it. In a reasonable world it would have been, but I didn't live in a reasonable world. I lived in an HOA. The harassment started subtly. My trash cans were knocked over twice in 1 week. Someone let the air out of my truck tires. A bag of dog poop appeared on my porch. None of it was directly traceable to the HOA, but the timing was suspicious. I installed a security camera system, front and back. The harassment immediately stopped, but the Cold War continued. At the next HOA meeting, which I attended despite their earlier ban, Deborah proposed a series of new rules that seemed specifically designed to make my life difficult. New restrictions on lawn decorations, my vegetable stand sign. New limits on foot traffic, people visiting the stand. New requirements for structure permits, even though I had a city permit. The other board members seemed uncomfortable with the obvious targeting, but nobody wanted to directly challenge Deborah. The proposals were tabled for further review. As I was leaving, a woman I hadn't met before approached me. She was probably in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. "Mr. Vasquez, I'm Alina Thompson. I live on Maple Drive. Nice to meet you. I want to thank you for what you're doing. My husband passed away last year, and I've been struggling with the grocery bills. Your vegetable stand has been a real blessing. I'm glad I could help. I also want you to know that not everyone agrees with how Deborah is handling this. There's going to be an HOA board election in 2 months. Several of us are planning to run against the current board." That was interesting. Because of my vegetable stand, partly, but also because this board has become increasingly disconnected from what residents actually want. They're more interested in enforcing rules than building community. You've shown what's possible when someone actually cares about their neighbors. Alina wasn't the only one. Over the next few weeks, I heard from multiple residents who were frustrated with the HOA's priorities. The vegetable stand had become a symbol of something larger, the tension between rigid rule enforcement and actual community building. The local news picked up on this angle. The same reporter who had written the first article did a follow-up piece about HOA overreach and community organizing. Deborah declined to comment, but Sharon gave a defensive interview about the important role of maintaining property standards. The election campaign was fascinating to watch. Alina ran for president against Deborah. A younger couple, the Patels, ran for board positions. Their platform was simple: focus on community, not compliance. I did what I could to support them without making it about my vegetable stand. I went door to door, talking to neighbors about the election. Nina organized a meet and greet at our house where the reform candidates could present their ideas. Deborah's campaign, in contrast, focused on maintaining our community's high standards and preventing our neighborhood from declining. She sent out glossy mailers featuring photos of perfectly manicured lawns and homes. Not coincidentally, none of the photos were from our actual neighborhood. The election was held on a Tuesday evening in May. Voting took place in the community clubhouse, and turnout was unusually high. Normally, maybe 20% of homeowners bothered to vote in HOA elections. This time, over 60% showed up. I cast my ballot for Alina and the reform candidates, then went home to wait. Nina made popcorn like we were watching election night coverage on TV, and in a way, we were. The results would be posted on the HOA website by 9 o'clock. At 8:47, my phone started buzzing with texts. Marcus. Dude, check the HOA site. I pulled up the website on my laptop. The results were already posted. Alina Thompson, 187 votes. Deborah Whitmore, 132 votes for the board positions. Both Patel candidates had won by similar margins. The entire board had flipped. Nina whooped and threw popcorn in the air. I sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. We actually did it, I said. You did it. This whole thing started because you wanted to share some vegetables. The transition happened quickly. The new board's first official meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday, and I made sure to attend. Alina opened the meeting with a short speech about her vision for the community. More focus on bringing neighbors together, less focus on nitpicking violations. The board would still enforce reasonable standards, but with common sense and flexibility. Then she addressed the elephant in the room. I want to start by officially recognizing Zane Vasquez and his vegetable stand. What started as a simple act of generosity became a flashpoint for bigger questions about what kind of community we want to be. The previous board treated it as a violation. This board sees it as an example. There was applause from the 15 or so residents in attendance. I felt my face getting hot. Going forward, Alina continued, we'll be working with the city to identify other opportunities for community building initiatives. Urban gardens, tool libraries, community events. We want Riverside Meadows to be a place where neighbors know and help each other. The meeting continued with routine business, but the tone was completely different from previous meetings. Instead of gotcha enforcement and nitpicking, there was actual discussion about solving problems and improving the neighborhood. As people were leaving, Deborah approached me. She looked tired and angry. I hope you're satisfied, she said. I'm satisfied that the community voted for what they wanted. You turned this neighborhood against me. I didn't turn anyone against anyone. I just wanted to share vegetables with my neighbors. You're the one who made it a fight. She opened her mouth to respond, then seemed to think better of it. She turned and walked away, her shoulders stiff. I felt a moment of sympathy. This had clearly been important to her, being in charge of the HOA, maintaining standards. But she had been so focused on rules that she forgot about the people those rules were supposed to serve. The next few months were transformative for Riverside Meadows. The new board approved a community garden project on an unused common area. They organized a neighborhood block party, the first one in 5 years. They revised the most onerous rules to be more reasonable while keeping the ones that actually mattered. My vegetable stand continued to thrive. As summer arrived, I added fresh corn, peppers, and green beans. Other neighbors started contributing too. The Martinez family added fresh eggs from their backyard chickens. The Johnsons contributed homemade jams. It evolved from just my project into a true community resource. In August, Mayor Chen came by for a photo op. She wanted to highlight successful urban agriculture initiatives, and my stand was apparently at the top of her list. The photo of her holding a basket of tomatoes while I explained the operation made the front page of the local section. "You should be proud of what you've accomplished here," she told me as cameras clicked. "This is exactly the kind of grassroots community building that makes cities stronger." I just wanted to share some vegetables. It's never just about the vegetables. It's about what they represent. Sharing, community, caring for your neighbors. That's what makes a place worth living in. She was right, of course. The vegetable stand had never been just about produce. It was about building connections in a world that seemed increasingly disconnected. It was about neighbors helping neighbors. It was about community mattering more than rules. In September, a leaner asked if I would be interested in joining the HOA board. Someone had resigned to move out of state and they needed to fill the position. Me, on the HOA board. Why not? You've shown you care about this community. And you understand what's important to residents. I talked it over with Nina that night. "What do you think?" I asked her. "I think you'd be good at it. But I also think you need to make sure it doesn't consume your life. You've got your job, the vegetable stand, us. I wouldn't let it take over. Then do it. Be the change you want to see and all that." I accepted the position and was officially appointed at the October board meeting. My first act was proposing a revision to the bylaws that would make it easier for residents to get approval for community-focused projects. It passed unanimously. November brought the first frost, and I had to adjust what I offered at the stand. More root vegetables, winter squash, hardy greens. Nina started making soups and stews that I would put out in thermoses with disposable cups. The stand became a place where people could get a hot meal on cold mornings. Mrs. Patterson told me I had probably saved her $100 or more on her monthly food budget. The Rodriguez kids stopped by every day after school for a snack. Even people who didn't need the food would stop to chat, to catch up with neighbors, to share news. That was maybe the best part. The stand had become a gathering place, a node of connection in the neighborhood. People would stand around talking about their days, their lives, their problems. I learned more about my neighbors in 6 months than I had in the 3 years we had lived there. In December, the local news did a year-end roundup of feel-good stories, and my vegetable stand made the list. The segment showed footage of the stand in different seasons, interviews with neighbors, and a brief clip of my confrontation with the old HOA board. What started as a simple act of generosity became a fight over community values, the reporter narrated. But in the end, the community sided with connection over compliance, with neighbors over rules. They interviewed a leaner who said, "Sometimes it takes one person standing up for what's right to remind the rest of us what's important." They tried to interview Deborah, but she declined to comment. I had seen her around the neighborhood a few times since the election, but we hadn't spoken. She seemed diminished somehow, less certain of herself. I wasn't angry at her anymore. She had genuinely believed she was doing the right thing, protecting property values and maintaining standards. She just had a different vision of what community meant. Her vision was about order and appearance. Mine was about connection and support. Neither vision was completely wrong, but hers had been too rigid to survive contact with reality. As Christmas approached, I decided to do something special. I reached out to local farms and businesses, explaining my project and asking for donations. The response was overwhelming. A local bakery donated bread. A dairy farm donated milk and cheese. A coffee roaster donated bags of coffee. On the Saturday before Christmas, I set up an expanded stand with tables borrowed from the community center. Everything was free, available to anyone who needed it. I put up a sign. Holiday food share, take what you need, give what you can. Community cares. Over 200 people stopped by that day. Some took food. Some left donations. Some just came to be part of something positive. Local news crews showed up again, and this time, other national outlets picked up the story. By evening, I was exhausted but happy. Nina had been there all day, helping manage the crowd and restock the tables. As we were packing up the last of the donations, Alina stopped by. "This was beautiful," she said, looking at the mostly empty tables. "This is what community should look like." We couldn't have done it without the new board's support. And we wouldn't exist without your vegetable stand. Funny how things work out. That night, Nina and I collapsed on the couch with mugs of hot chocolate. The tree was lit in the corner, and our small house felt incredibly warm and full. "Hell of a year," Nina said. "Hell of a year," I agreed. "Think Deborah learned anything from all this?" I thought about it. Maybe, or maybe she's just bitter. Either way, it doesn't matter anymore. The community made its choice. Because you stood up for what you believed in. Because we all did. Alina, the Patels, everyone who voted, everyone who supported the stand. It wasn't just me. It started with you. She was right, though I didn't like taking all the credit, but it had started with me, with a simple wooden stand and some free vegetables. With the belief that community mattered more than rules. In January, I received a formal letter from the city. It was signed by Mayor Chen and the city planning director. They wanted to feature my vegetable stand in a case study about successful urban agriculture initiatives. Would I be willing to work with them to develop a guide for other residents interested in starting similar projects? I said yes, immediately. Over the next few months, I worked with city staff to document everything: how to build a stand, how to organize donations, how to get permits, how to navigate HOA issues. The resulting guide was published on the city website and distributed to community groups. Within 6 months, there were 15 other stands operating in Asheville. Each one was different, reflecting the personality and resources of the person running it. But all of them shared the same core principle: community over commerce, connection over profit. The mayor invited all of us to a reception at City Hall in June. It was a beautiful evening, warm but not hot, and the event was held in a courtyard garden. Mayor Chen gave a short speech about the importance of grassroots community building. A year and a half ago, one resident decided to share his vegetables with his neighbors, she said. He faced resistance, threatened fines, legal challenges. But he persisted because he believed in something simple and powerful: that communities are stronger when neighbors help neighbors. Today, 15 stands operate across our city, providing food, building connections, and proving that the best solutions often come from citizens themselves. There was applause, and then she called me up to the front. She handed me a plaque recognizing my outstanding contribution to community food security and urban sustainability. I gave a short, awkward speech thanking everyone who had supported the project. Nina was in the front row, grinning at my obvious discomfort with the attention. After the reception, as Nina and I were walking to our car, someone called my name. I turned to see Deborah standing near the parking lot entrance. She looked uncomfortable. "Hello, Deborah." "Hello, Zane. I saw the ceremony. Congratulations." "Thank you." There was an awkward silence. Then she said, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong about the vegetable stand. I was so focused on rules and property values that I forgot about what actually makes a neighborhood worth living in." I was genuinely surprised. I appreciate that. I've been thinking a lot about why I reacted the way I did. I think I was scared. Scared that if we let one rule slide, everything would fall apart. But I was wrong. Your stand didn't hurt the neighborhood. It made it better. The neighborhood needed both of us in a way. Someone to push boundaries and someone to maintain standards. We just needed to find the balance. She smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I had seen from her. Maybe. Anyway, I wanted you to know. What you did was good. I wish I had seen that sooner. We shook hands and she walked away. Nina came up beside me. Did that just happen? I think it did. Character development for Deborah. Who saw that coming? We drove home through the warm summer evening, past neighborhoods and parks and local businesses. Asheville wasn't a perfect city, but it was a community trying to do better to be better. And I had played a small part in that. The vegetable stand was still there in my front yard, still serving neighbors, still building connections. It had weathered seasons and conflicts and challenges. It had become part of the neighborhood's identity. And it all started because I wanted to share some tomatoes. 2 years after I first set up my vegetable stand, Riverside Meadows looked noticeably different. Not in terms of physical appearance, but in feel. Neighbors knew each other. People stopped to chat on evening walks. Kids played together across property lines. The community garden was thriving, managed by a volunteer committee. The HOA board, under Aliner's leadership, had transformed the association from an enforcement body into something more like a community organization. They still maintained standards, but with flexibility and common sense. The focus was on bringing people together rather than keeping them in line. My vegetable stand had expanded twice. It now occupied a larger space in my yard, with multiple tables and a small seating area where people could sit and talk. In the summer, there were often a dozen people gathered there in the evenings, sharing food and conversation. I had built similar stands for 3 other neighborhoods, helping them navigate the permit process and avoid the conflicts I had faced. Each time, the city was supportive and the process was smooth. My initial battle had paved the way for others. In August, Nina and I found out she was pregnant. We sat in the backyard that evening, watching the sunset and talking about the future. "Our kid is going to grow up in this neighborhood," she said, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "In this community you helped build. We helped build, all of us. You started it. You stood up to Deborah and the HOA when they said you couldn't do it. You got the permit, fought the fight, built the community. I just wanted to share some vegetables." She laughed. "You keep saying that like it was a small thing, but it wasn't. It was revolutionary in its own small way." Maybe she was right. Maybe there was something revolutionary about insisting that community mattered, that neighbors should help neighbors, that rules should serve people rather than the other way around. The vegetable stand was still there 3 years later when our daughter was born. Nina and I brought her home from the hospital to a neighborhood that felt like family. Aliner had organized a meal train. The Rodriguezes brought over a hand-knitted blanket. Mrs. Patterson left a basket of baby clothes her grandchildren had outgrown. As I carried my daughter into the house, past the vegetable stand that had started everything, I thought about what I wanted to teach her. About standing up for what's right. About building community. About sharing what you have with those who need it. The stand was weathered now, the wood silvered by 3 years of sun and rain. But it was still sturdy, still serving its purpose, just like the community around it. That evening, I sat on the porch with my daughter sleeping in my arms, watching neighbors stop by the vegetable stand. Some took food. Some left donations. Some just stopped to chat with whoever else was there. The stand had become part of the neighborhood's daily rhythm, as natural and necessary as the streetlights that came on at dusk. This was what I had fought for. Not just the right to put vegetables on a table, but the principle behind it. The idea that communities are built through small acts of generosity, through neighbors caring for neighbors, through standing up for what matters even when it's difficult. Deborah had been wrong when she said the stand violated community standards. The stand had become the community standard. It represented what Riverside Meadows was at its best, a place where people looked out for each other, where rules served community rather than suppressed it, where a simple wooden table full of vegetables could change everything. And to think it all started because I wanted to share some tomatoes.